Bernard Arnault has destroyed competitors, outmaneuvered governments, and turned grief and nostalgia into a $500 handbag. He is, by every measure, the most powerful man in fashion history. But here's what nobody tells you. The life he actually lives is even stranger than the brands he owns. The boy from Roubaix who bought Paris. For years, Bernard Arnault was known for driving a humble little car around Paris purely to avoid attention, even though his garage could hold a Bugatti Chiron worth around $3.3 million, Ferraris, an Aston Martin, a Rolls-Royce Phantom, and a Mercedes Pullman. That's the whole man in one image. The wealth is volcanic, the personality is a whisper, the fortune screams, but the man barely raises his voice. And the question this entire story sets out to answer is simple but enormous. How does a whisper end up owning everything? Because make no mistake, he owns everything. He owns a 333-foot super yacht called Symphony. It was built in 2015 by the Dutch shipyard Feedship, refitted in 2022, and cost roughly $150 million. And owning it is only half the bill. Just keeping it floating costs between $10 and $15 million every single year. Fuel, crew, maintenance, insurance, the endless tax of perfection. It holds 20 guests across 8 cabins and carries a crew of 38, an entire small workforce living at sea just to serve a single family. The centerpiece is the kind of thing you'd expect in a science fiction film. A 6-meter glass-bottomed infinity pool with a waterfall, which forms a glowing ceiling for the beach club sitting directly below it. Swim above, and someone is lounging beneath you, looking up through the water at your silhouette. You'd think one floating palace would be enough for any human being. It wasn't. In early 2026, reports surfaced that Arnault commissioned a brand new mega yacht, around 143 meters, for a reported $650 million. A vessel that would dwarf the one he already had and rank among the largest private ships on the planet. Then there's the island. Not a beach house, an island. Indigo Island in the Bahamas, 133 acres, bought back in 1999 for around $37 million. A private slice of the Caribbean, far from cameras, far from crowds, far from the world that would love nothing more than a photo of him in swim trunks. And the houses, spread across the map like pins on a conqueror's board. His main Paris residence, valued at around $200 million, with expansive gardens, an Olympic-sized swimming pool, tennis courts, and interiors built to display his art. A home that reportedly took over a decade to perfect. Because for this man, good enough simply doesn't exist. Chateau Cheval Blanc in Bordeaux, acquired in 1998, sitting on over 12 acres of vineyards, and valued at more than $200 million. A seafront villa in the exclusive gated community of Les Parcs de Saint-Tropez, a 34-room ski retreat in Courchevel with a heated pool, sauna, and jacuzzi. Around 5 properties in Los Angeles worth roughly $125 million in total, including a single $121.5 million modern mansion in Trousdale Estates, a $22 million estate in the Hamptons, 3 continents, mountains, vineyards, beaches, and a private island, and tying it all together, a fortune that has, at moments, made him the single wealthiest human being on the planet, with a net worth that floats somewhere in the $150 to $200 billion range, rising and falling with the company that built it. So here's the thing you have to understand before we go any further. None of this, not the yacht, not the island, not the mansions, not the title of richest man alive, started anywhere near luxury. It started in the rain. Born into concrete, not silk, Bernard Jean-Étienne Arnault was born on March 5, 1949, in Roubaix, France, a gray industrial town in the north of the country. The kind of place built around factories and damp weather, not runways and champagne. He wasn't born into silk. He was born into concrete. His father, Jean Arnault, ran a civil engineering and construction company called Ferret Savenel. Pipes, Buildings, roads, the unglamorous skeleton of a working city. If you'd walked through that town, pointed at the Arnault boy, and said, "One day he'll own Dior, Tiffany, and Louis Vuitton," people would have laughed in your face. But one thread of glamour was quietly stitched into that childhood. His mother, Marie-Joseph, had a fascination with Dior. Imagine it, a woman in a northern factory town, surrounded by industry and rain, quietly in love with the most elegant fashion house in all of Paris, a dream of beauty in a place built on function. And she gave her son one more gift on top of that. She made sure he received classical piano training. Hold on to both of those details. The Dior, the piano. They seem like nothing, a mother's small obsessions, but they come back to define this man's entire life in ways no one in that house could have dreamed. The engineer who became a predator. Young Bernard was sharp. Not artist sharp, at least not on the surface. He was math sharp, the kind of mind that takes a problem and instantly starts cracking it into clean, logical pieces. He graduated from the prestigious École Polytechnique, one of France's top engineering schools, in 1971. Picture France's version of MIT crossed with a military academy, crossed with the quiet club that actually runs the country. You don't enroll there to become a fashion king. You go there to become an engineer, a technocrat, a builder of systems. And at first, that's exactly what he became. He joined the family construction business and climbed fast. Director in 1974, CEO in 1977, chairman in 1978. At just 29 years old, most men would have settled there. A successful regional construction firm, a comfortable name, a comfortable life. But comfort was never the plan. Here's the first crack of lightning that showed Arnault was wired completely differently from every other heir to a family business. Around 1974 to 1976, he convinced his father to sell off the industrial construction division for about 40 million French francs and pivot the entire company toward real estate, especially holiday accommodations and timeshares. The firm was renamed Trillionaire. Think about the nerve that takes. He looked at the business that had fed his family for a generation, the thing his father built, and he calmly said, "This is the past. The future is somewhere else." And his father listened. Then came the chapter that turned a clever businessman into a legend. In the early 1980s, he left for the United States. He went partly to escape France's socialist policies of the era, and while he was there, he studied leveraged buyouts and began spotting undervalued luxury assets. Sit with that picture. A French engineer in America, quietly learning the dark art of buying entire companies with borrowed money, studying which prestigious old names were poorly run and ripe for the taking. He wasn't on vacation. He was loading the gun. The mother's dream becomes the son's conquest. And in 1984, he fired it. At age 35, Arnault used about $15 million of his own and family money, backed by the powerful bank Lazard Frères, to acquire the bankrupt textile conglomerate Boussac Saint Frères for roughly $80 million, a deal that symbolically involved a single franc plus the assumption of its enormous debt. Now, why on earth would a sharp young man chase a bankrupt textile company? Why bet everything on a sinking ship? Because of the treasure buried in the hull. Boussac owned the iconic but struggling Christian Dior fashion house, along with the legendary Le Bon Marché department store. There it is, Dior, his mother's obsession. The boy from the rainy factory town had just bought the very house she used to dream about, the most poetic acquisition in business history. And he did it not out of sentiment, but out of cold, surgical strategy. Because he didn't buy Dior to frame it on a wall and admire it. He bought it to fix it, and the fixing was brutal. He restructured aggressively, selling off most of the non-core assets and firing around 9,000 workers out of roughly 22,000. That's not trimming, that's amputation. And the cuts were severe enough to earn him a chilling nickname that would follow him for years. He became known as the Terminator. The criticism was loud and relentless. He was accused of asset stripping, of being heartless, of treating a proud French institution like a spreadsheet to be optimized. In a country where business was supposed to be gentlemanly and slow, here was a young man moving like a predator. But the spreadsheet worked. By 1987, the businesses he'd kept had turned profitable, with revenues climbing past $112 million. The bankrupt gamble had become a money machine, and in the wreckage and the profit, Arnault learned the single most important lesson of his life, the one that would build everything that came after. He learned that heritage luxury brands were almost magical assets, names that had taken a century to build, carrying prestige that money literally cannot manufacture from scratch, often run badly by people who treated them like fragile museum pieces instead of engines of profit. They were sitting there all over France and Italy, undervalued and underpowered, just waiting for someone with the nerve to take them, protect their soul, and run their finances like a ruthless machine. He had the nerve. He had the playbook. He had Dior as his proof of concept. Now all he needed was something far bigger to point it all at. A stage worthy of the empire taking shape in his mind. He found it in a fragile new company called LVMH, and the way he seized control of it was so cold, so calculated, that it would change the rules of French business forever. The Wolf in Cashmere. In 1987, a brand new company was born out of a marriage that was already quietly falling apart. That year, the champagne and cognac house Moet Hennessy merged with the leather goods house Louis Vuitton to form a single giant, LVMH. On paper, it looked like a glorious union of two French crown jewels, bubbles and luggage, both dripping with prestige. In reality, it was two proud captains who couldn't stand each other, both gripping the wheel of one ship sailing in opposite directions. It was an internal power struggle between Moet Hennessy's Alain Chevalier and Louis Vuitton's Henri Racamier. And here is a rule that runs through all of Arnault's story. When two giants are busy wrestling each other, a third, quieter man can slip into the room and walk out with the crown. Arnault was invited to invest amid the disputes. They wanted him as a friendly ally, a peacekeeper with deep pockets, a calm outsider who could help break the deadlock. He smiled. He agreed. He wrote the checks. They had absolutely no idea what they had just welcomed through the door. He partnered with the British company Guinness, quietly bought up warrants and shares, and built his stake to around 43.5%. And then came the moment that revealed his almost supernatural sense of timing. He outmaneuvered his rivals during the 1987 market crash, Black Monday, when LVMH stock got cut in half. While the rest of the world watched their screens turn red and panicked, while everyone else was selling in terror, Arnault saw something else entirely. He saw a fire sale on the most valuable luxury company in existence. He didn't flinch. He bought the falling knife with both hands. By 1989, he had become chairman and CEO of the entire group after ousting Racamier, who later sued him with limited success. Let that sink in. The man invited in to keep the peace had taken the whole kingdom for himself. The peacekeeper was the conqueror all along. Courts even described some of his maneuvers as irregular, though they were ultimately ruled legal. In France's gentlemanly, slow-moving business culture, his tactics were viewed as shockingly aggressive, too cold, too ruthless, too American. They didn't have a category for a man like this. But it didn't matter what they called him. He had won, and the empire was now his to build. The star brand strategy and build he did. With LVMH as his weapon and his war chest, the boy from Roubaix launched a hunting spree that would last 3 decades and reshape the entire luxury world. His strategy even had a name, Star Brands. The idea was to acquire iconic, timeless names, preserve their creative freedom while centralizing the financial control, and then expand them aggressively across the globe, with a special hunger for Asia. It was a kind of beautiful contradiction. Let the designers dream without limits. He would handle the cold mathematics behind the curtain. Art on the surface, ruthless accounting underneath, and the math was relentless. Through the 1990s, he absorbed Givenchy, Kenzo, Loewe, Celine, Berluti. He built a watches and jewelry division, snapping up Tag Heuer in 1999, and grew the beauty retail giant Sephora. One by one, the great names of European luxury fell under a single roof. Then the deals got even bigger, the numbers more staggering. Bulgari in 2011 for around $5 billion. Loro Piana, the maker of impossibly fine cashmere, in 2013 for $2.6 billion. The luggage maker Rimowa in 2016, the Belmond Hotel Group in 2018 for $3.2 billion, a deal that brought along the legendary Orient Express and Venice's iconic Cipriani brick by Gilded Brick, the Empire Rose. And then came the masterpiece, the deal that crowned the whole thing. In 2021, LVMH acquired the American jeweler Tiffany & Co. for $15.8 billion, the largest luxury acquisition in history. The little blue box, that perfect symbol of American romance, now belonged to a Frenchman from Roubaix. By the time the dust settled on 3 decades of conquest, LVMH had grown into a colossus of more than 75 prestigious brands, reporting €84.7 billion in revenue in 2024. A single company holding the dreams of the entire luxury world in its hands.